The mud staining his son's orchestra jacket was more than dirt, it was a declaration of war. They thought they were bullying a quiet musician. They didn't know they had just targeted a command sergeant major's son. The tidy suburban streets of Westfield were supposed to be a sanctuary. For Command Sergeant Major Marcus Mac Thorne, recently retired after 25 years in the U.S. Army's most elite counterterrorism unit, it was the final phase of his longest mission, raising his son. A widower for the past decade, Mac had accepted the position as Westfield High's head of security with the same quiet professionalism he'd applied to everything in his life. The job was a cover, a way to be present for his son Elias's last years of school, a placid harbor after a lifetime at sea. No one here knew that the unassuming, 55-year-old black man who checked fire extinguishers and monitored student parking had once planned operations that shaped global headlines. His imposing 6'2" frame was softened by a friendly, easygoing demeanor, and his short, graying crew cut was the only hint of his disciplined past. His son, Elias, was his opposite and his entire world. At 16, Elias was a gifted cellist, a quiet, introspective boy who communicated more through the soulful notes of his instrument than with words. His talent was undeniable. Within a month of transferring to Westfield, he had earned the principal cellist's chair in the school orchestra, a prestigious position usually held by a senior. For Mac, it was a moment of immense pride. For others, it was an affront. The school's self-appointed royalty, the varsity football team, saw Elias's success through a distorted lens of racial entitlement. The trio was a high school cliché made flesh: Jake Morrison, the star quarterback, whose father's construction company had built half the town; Tyler Knox, the brutish linebacker and enforcer, whose father sat on the school board; and Brandon Mills, the insecure follower who orbited their gravitational pull. They saw a new black student achieving prominence in a space they considered theirs to define, and they reacted with the casual cruelty of the privileged. Mac saw the signs first. As head of security, he saw everything. He noticed the way the trio would shoulder past Elias in the crowded hallways, the snickering whispers that followed his son from class to class. He read the incident reports: Elias's sheet music accidentally knocked into a trash can, his locker combination mysteriously jammed. They were probing actions, testing for weakness. Mac logged every incident in a private file, his mind, trained to see patterns in terrorist cells, easily identifying the escalating aggression of a schoolyard insurgency. He said nothing to Elias, waiting for his son to come to him. He knew that moment was inevitable. It came on a rainy Friday afternoon. The orchestra was rehearsing for the upcoming fall concert. Afterward, Elias, carrying his cello case, walked toward the student parking lot. The path led past the athletic fields, where Jake, Tyler, and Brandon were lingering after practice. They saw him coming. Mac was in the security office, conducting a routine review of the exterior camera feeds, when his eyes locked onto the screen monitoring the west exit. He saw the three boys position themselves, a casual triangle of intimidation. He saw them block his son's path. The camera had no audio, but the body language was as loud as a gunshot. Jake's arrogant posture, Tyler's aggressive stance. He saw Jake say something that made his son flinch. Then it happened. With a coordinated shove, they sent Elias stumbling backward off the concrete path and into a large, muddy puddle left by the afternoon's downpour. Elias went down hard, his cello case landing beside him with a sickening thud. The three boys erupted in laughter, high-fiving as if they'd just scored a winning touchdown. They pointed, jeered, and then swaggered away, leaving Elias sitting in the cold, brown water, his orchestra jacket, a symbol of his hard-won achievement, now stained and ruined. Mac didn't move. His breathing remained even, his hands steady. But something inside him, a part of him he had worked hard to keep dormant in this peaceful new life, clicked into place. The quiet head of security vanished. In his place sat the command sergeant major. The field of engagement had been chosen. The enemy had made its first move. And the rules of engagement had just been rewritten. That evening, the Thorne household was quiet. Elias had showered and changed, but the stain of the afternoon's humiliation clung to him more stubbornly than the mud. He sat at the kitchen table, pushing food around his plate, his usual quietness now heavy with shame. Mac didn't press him. He simply sat across from his son, cleaned and oiled a piece of his old service equipment with methodical precision, and waited. "They called me a diversity hire for the orchestra," Elias finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "Said I only got the first chair because the school wanted to look woke. Mac stopped his work. "And what do you think? I think I practiced 6 hours a day for 10 years to earn that chair," Elias said, a spark of defiance in his eyes. "That's right," Mac affirmed, his voice a low, steady rumble. "Their words have no power over your truth. But their actions require a response." He leaned forward. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." As Elias recounted the weeks of subtle torments culminating in the mud puddle, Mac listened with an unnerving stillness. His mind wasn't just processing a father's anger, it was absorbing intelligence, building a threat assessment. He remembered a similar situation years ago in a dusty village in Afghanistan. A local warlord's son, a bully drunk on his father's power, had been terrorizing merchants. Mac's unit couldn't engage directly, it would have violated their rules of engagement and sparked a tribal war. So, Mac had watched him. He learned the bully's routines, his vanities, his secret vices. He didn't touch the boy. He simply created the conditions for the boy's own arrogance to become his undoing, arranging for the warlord to accidentally discover his son was skimming money from the opium trade. The problem resolved itself, quietly and permanently. The principle was the same: never wrestle with a pig. You both get dirty, and the pig likes it. Instead, you build the pen and let the pig trap itself. "We are not going to sink to their level, Elias," Mac said when his son had finished. "We are not going to fight them on their terms. We are going to use their own arrogance, their own sloppiness, as the weapon that defeats them. But first, you log everything. Times, dates, locations, witnesses. Create a file. In our world, documentation is ammunition." For the next week, Mac dedicated his off hours to his own form of reconnaissance. As head of security, he had legitimate access to the school's information systems. He sat in his small, windowless office late into the night, the glow of the monitor illuminating his focused expression. He pulled the academic and disciplinary files for Morrison, Knox, and Mills. The patterns were clear. Jake Morrison, star athlete, average grades, 2 documented instances of academic dishonesty that were quietly swept away by the administration after calls from his influential father. Tyler Knox, a history of physical altercations, anger management referrals that were never followed up on, his file littered with notes from teachers about his intimidating behavior, all ignored because his father on the school board made him untouchable. Brandon Mills, a clean file, but a social media presence filled with desperate attempts to emulate Jake and Tyler's toxic machismo. Mac cross-referenced their schedules with security camera footage. He mapped their movements, their social circles, their blind spots. He wasn't a grieving father anymore. He was a mission planner. He identified their centers of gravity. For Jake, it was his reputation and his football scholarship, his ticket to a life of continued glory. For Tyler, it was the same scholarship, but born of desperation, not entitlement, his only ticket out of a financially struggling family. For Brandon, it was simply acceptance by the other two. Mac created 3 separate digital folders on an encrypted drive. Each was labeled with a code name: Operation Quarterback, Operation Enforcer, and Operation Acolyte. He printed out organizational charts and target profiles. His small security office, smelling of stale coffee and industrial cleaner, had become an active command post for a covert war. The objective was simple, not just to stop the bullies, but to dismantle the system of privilege that enabled them. Operation Quarterback commenced on a Tuesday. Mac's intelligence gathering had paid off. Through careful observation of off-campus footage and cross-referencing gossip from the janitorial staff, he had confirmed a key vulnerability. Jake Morrison, despite his golden boy image, was a recreational user of high-end, illegal performance-enhancing supplements, which he often kept in the glove compartment of his ostentatious pickup truck. He was arrogant enough to believe no one would ever dare to search his vehicle on school grounds. This arrogance was the foundational weakness Mac intended to exploit. Mac wouldn't plant anything. He wouldn't break the law. He would simply create the circumstances for the truth to be revealed through official channels. The plan required precision and plausible deniability. At 10 a.m., he used a burner phone and a voice modulator, standard issue from his old life, to place a call. It wasn't to the police, but to a trusted contact, a retired military police officer who now worked as a regional liaison for a network of school resource officers. Mac didn't identify himself. "I'm a parent at Westfield High," the modulated voice said. "My son told me the quarterback, Jake Morrison, has been bragging about the steroids he keeps in his truck. He's worried someone will get hurt. I don't want my name involved, but I think someone should check it out before a kid gets sick." The tip was logged through official channels, flagged as a credible safety concern. An hour later, the school's assigned police liaison, Officer Miller, a straight-arrow cop who disliked the entitled athletes, received the dispatch. He approached Principal Thompson with the report. The principal, a weak-willed man terrified of upsetting powerful parents, was hesitant. A search of Jake Morrison's truck. Based on one anonymous tip. "His father will have my head," Thompson fretted. Mac, who had been, coincidentally, walking by during his routine patrol, stepped into the office. "Principal Thompson," he said respectfully, "school policy is quite clear. A credible report of illegal substances on campus mandates a non-invasive search of student vehicles in the parking lot. Officer Miller is required to investigate. As head of security, I'm required to accompany him and document the procedure." He had boxed the principal in with his own rulebook. Thompson, flustered but unable to refuse a direct protocol citation in front of a police officer, reluctantly agreed. The scene in the student parking lot was a masterclass in controlled theater. Mac, Officer Miller, and a visibly nervous Principal Thompson approached Jake's massive black truck. Jake was pulled from his AP history class, his usual swagger on full display. "A search? Of my truck? Are you kidding me?" Jake laughed, looking at Mac as if he were a bug. "What's this about, old man? You find a lost lunchbox?" "Routine procedure, Mr. Morrison," Mac said, his voice flat and professional, a clipboard in his hand. "We have a report to follow up on." "This is harassment," Jake sneered. "My father is going to hear about this." Officer Miller ignored him. "Pop the lock, son." Jake's arrogance began to curdle into confusion as he unlocked the doors. He still believed this was a joke, a pointless exercise in bureaucracy. Miller began his search on the driver's side. Mac stood back, observing, his role purely as a school official ensuring protocol was followed. He made sure his body camera, a new piece of equipment he'd insisted all security staff wear, was on and recording. The search was methodical. Miller checked under the seats, in the side pockets. Nothing. A flicker of relief, then renewed arrogance, crossed Jake's face. "You guys done wasting my time?" "Just the glove compartment left," Miller said. Jake's face went white. It was a subtle shift, but Mac, trained to read micro-expressions from 20 feet away, saw it clearly. The quarterback's composure cracked. "That's locked," Jake stammered. "You need a warrant for that. School policy, which you signed at the beginning of the year, states that all parts of a vehicle on school property are subject to search based on credible suspicion, Mr. Morrison," Mac interjected calmly, quoting the student handbook verbatim. Page 47, subsection C. Defeated, Jake opened the glove compartment. Inside, nestled next to his registration and a pair of expensive sunglasses, was a small, unmarked vial of clear liquid and a pack of unlabeled pills. Silence. Principal Thompson looked like he was going to be sick. Officer Miller picked up the vial with a gloved hand. Well, Jake. What do we have here? It's not mine. I've never seen it before. Someone must have planted it. Jake's voice was high-pitched, panicked. The invincible quarterback was gone, replaced by a terrified teenager. Planted it in your locked glove compartment? Miller asked, his voice laced with disbelief. Son, you're coming with me. As Officer Miller led a protesting, hysterical Jake toward his cruiser, Mac made a final note on his clipboard. He looked up and his eyes briefly met Tyler and Brandon's across the parking lot. They had been watching the whole scene unfold, their faces a mask of stunned disbelief. Mac gave them no sign of recognition, no flicker of triumph. He just gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, as if to say, one down. Operation Quarterback was complete. Jake Morrison's arrest created a power vacuum, and Tyler Knox, the enforcer, filled it with raw, unfocused rage. The fear that had briefly touched him in the parking lot was quickly replaced by a furious paranoia. He saw conspiracies everywhere, and his anger needed a target. He became more aggressive in the hallways, his physical presence a constant, simmering threat. But beneath the rage was desperation. With Jake's scholarship offers rescinded, Tyler knew his own athletic future was more precarious than ever. The pressure mounted, and he became sloppy. To make extra cash, Tyler had been running a small but profitable side hustle selling illegal, high-nicotine vaping devices to underclassmen. With Jake gone, he ramped up his operation, needing money for legal fees he feared might be coming his way. He grew bolder, making sales in the open, behind the bleachers or in the less trafficked arts hallway, convinced the school's administration was too preoccupied with the Jake Morrison fallout to notice a little vape selling. He was wrong. Mac had been tracking Tyler's activities for a week, using the school's comprehensive security camera system. It was all within his purview as head of security, part of his mandate to ensure campus safety. From his office, he watched Tyler's every move. He logged each transaction, cross-referencing camera timestamps with the students Tyler met. He created a digital file containing high-resolution video clips of 4 separate hand-to-hand sales, each one showing the clear exchange of money for a vaping device. He even enhanced the audio on one clip, catching Tyler boasting to a freshman, "This stuff will knock you on your back. Way stronger than what you can buy at the store." The evidence was ironclad, legally obtained, and utterly damning. Mac didn't leak the footage. He didn't send an anonymous tip. He followed the chain of command. He compiled the videos, along with the relevant sections of the Student Code of Conduct and state law regarding the distribution of nicotine products to minors, into a formal incident report. He then scheduled a meeting with Principal Thompson and requested the presence of Tyler's father, Mr. Knox, in his capacity as a school board member, framing it as a critical discussion on student safety protocols. The meeting took place in the principal's stuffy office. Mr. Knox arrived with the swagger of a man who believed his position made him immune to trouble. "All right, Thorne," he began, not even bothering to sit down. "What's so important?" "My son tells me you've been on some kind of power trip since the Morrison kid got himself in trouble." Mac remained standing, calm and professional. "Mr. Knox, thank you for coming. I've requested this meeting to address a significant breach of school safety and state law occurring on campus." He turned to the large monitor on the principal's wall and, without another word, hit play. The first video clip showed Tyler, clear as day, taking cash from a nervous-looking freshman and handing him a vape. Mac let it play, then switched to the next clip. And the next. And the next. The audio of Tyler boasting about the strength of his illegal product filled the silent room. Mr. Knox's face went from ruddy confidence to pale shock, then to a deep, apoplectic purple. This is entrapment. You targeted my boy." "Sir," Mac said, his voice as cool and hard as polished granite. "My job is to ensure the safety of all 1,200 students at this school, including the 14-year-old your son is selling illegal substances to for profit. I observed a pattern of illicit activity and documented it using official school resources, as per my job description. This is not entrapment. This is evidence. Principal Thompson, who had been shrinking in his chair, finally found his voice. Frank, the evidence is clear. We have to suspend him. And with the video, we are legally obligated to turn this over to the police. You can't. Mr. Knox roared, turning on the principal. I'm on the board. I'll have your job for this. You are welcome to try, sir, Mac interjected smoothly. But the school board might be more interested in why one of its members is attempting to cover up a criminal enterprise run by his son on school property. I've already sent a copy of this report to the superintendent's office, as protocol requires. The threat hung in the air, a perfectly executed checkmate. Mr. Knox deflated, the fight draining out of him, replaced by the sickening realization of his son's, and his own, folly. Tyler Knox was expelled the next day. The police filed charges for distribution of nicotine to minors. His remaining scholarship offers vanished in a puff of smoke. Operation Enforcer was complete. The fall of his two best friends sent Brandon Mills into a spiral of pure panic. He wasn't a leader or an enforcer, he was a follower, and his leaders were gone. In his terrified mind, a clear and horrifying pattern had emerged. A dark force was moving against them, dismantling their lives with terrifying precision. And he was convinced that force was the new security guard, the quiet, watchful old man who always seemed to be there, observing. Brandon's fear, festering for a week, finally boiled over. He used a burner phone to call a now bailed out and furious Jake Morrison, and illegally entangled Tyler Knox. It's him, Brandon whispered frantically into the phone. It's the security guard. Thorne. He's been behind it all. He's been watching us, setting us up. We're next. I know it. Desperation is a powerful catalyst for terrible ideas. Jake, his future in ashes, was craving revenge. Tyler, facing criminal charges, was looking for someone to blame. Brandon's conspiracy theory gave their rage a face. They agreed to meet. Their plan, hatched in the paranoid echo chamber of Tyler's garage, was simple and brutish. They would confront Thorne. They would corner him after hours, intimidate him, and force him to admit he'd set them up. They would record his confession. It was the last, desperate gambit of three cornered animals. They chose their location, the back parking lot behind the gymnasium, poorly lit and usually empty an hour after school activities ended. They knew Thorne made a final patrol of the building around 6 p.m. They would be waiting for him. That evening, Mac was finishing his final walkthrough. He knew they were coming. He had noticed Brandon's increasingly erratic behavior all week. He'd also received a text from his son, Elias, "Dad, be careful. I heard Brandon Mills telling his friend he thinks you're the one who got Jake and Tyler in trouble." Mac had simply replied, "Message received. I'll be home for dinner at 7. As he stepped out of the gym's back door into the deepening twilight of the parking lot, he saw them. 3 silhouettes detaching from the shadows near the dumpsters. Jake, Tyler, and Brandon. They fanned out, forming a loose semicircle, cutting off his path to his car. It was a classic, amateur ambush formation. "Thorne," Jake snarled, his voice dripping with venom. "We need to talk." Mac stopped, his posture relaxed, hands loosely at his sides. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice calm. "It's a little late for a parent-teacher conference, isn't it?" "Cut the crap," Tyler spat, stepping forward. He was bigger than Mac, his linebacker's frame built for impact. "We know it was you. You set us up. You ruined our lives." "Your choices ruined your lives," Mac replied evenly. "I just made sure the paperwork was in order. I'd advise all 3 of you to walk away right now." "We're not going anywhere until you admit what you did," Brandon squeaked, trying to sound tough. "We're going to get a confession, and we're going to clear our names." Mac sighed. "Son, the only thing you're going to get is a lesson in making poor life choices." He subtly tapped the small body camera clipped to his security vest, ensuring its green recording light was active. The wide-angle security camera on the corner of the gym roof was already recording, a fact he knew they had overlooked. The confrontation escalated exactly as he had predicted. Tyler, the hothead, charged first. He lunged, aiming to tackle Mac and drive him into the brick wall. It was a move that worked on the football field, but Mac wasn't a quarterback standing in a pocket. Mac pivoted on the ball of his left foot, letting Tyler's momentum carry him past. As Tyler hurtled by, Mac's right hand shot out, not in a punch, but in a stiff, open palm strike to the nerve cluster just below Tyler's ear. It was a standard Delta Force disabling technique. Tyler's legs went slack, and he crumpled to the asphalt, dazed and momentarily paralyzed, his charge ending in a heap. Jake, momentarily stunned, reacted with a wild swing. Mac blocked the punch effortlessly, trapping Jake's arm. In one fluid motion, he spun, using Jake's own body as a shield as he applied a simple, painful wrist lock. Jake howled in pain and dropped to his knees. Brandon, seeing his two powerful friends neutralized in under 5 seconds, froze in pure terror. He started to back away. "Stay right where you are, Mr. Mills," Mac commanded, his voice suddenly losing all its warmth, replaced by the ice of a command sergeant major. He released Jake, who cradled his wrist, whimpering. Mac took a slow step toward Brandon. "The lesson for tonight is over. Now, you're all going to sit here on the curb and wait for the police, whom I am now calling." He pulled out his phone. The three boys, broken and terrified, stared at the man they thought was just an old security guard. They had come for a confession. Instead, they had stumbled into a masterclass in controlled violence, delivered by a legend they never even knew existed. And it was all on camera. The arrival of the police was almost an anticlimax. They found 3 of the school's star athletes subdued and sitting on a curb, and the head of security, Mac Thorne, standing calmly beside them, filing a report on his phone. "They assaulted me, officer," Mac stated simply when the first patrol car arrived. "I defended myself. The entire incident should be on my body camera, as well as the school's CCTV camera 7B. The evidence was absolute, immediate, and irrefutable." The video showed 3 students initiating a coordinated, unprovoked attack on a school official on school grounds. The subsequent legal fallout was catastrophic for the boys. They were charged with felony assault on a school official, on top of their existing charges. The racial motivation behind their initial harassment of Elias became the central pillar of a federal hate crime investigation that the FBI now eagerly pursued. The story became a national sensation, but the narrative was not what the boys' parents had hoped. It was the story of a decorated Delta Force veteran who, in his quiet retirement, was forced to use his unique skills to protect his son and dismantle a toxic culture of racist entitlement in a privileged American high school. Mac Thorne never gave an interview. He never had to. The evidence did all the talking. The school board fired Principal Thompson and removed Tyler's father from his position. A new administration was brought in with a clear mandate for change. Months later, Mac stood with Elias on the school's auditorium stage. The orchestra was performing its winter concert. Elias, now the undisputed and respected principal cellist, played a solo from Bach, his music filling the hall with a beauty and resilience that was its own form of victory. From the wings, Mac watched his son, not as a commander surveying a successful operation, but simply as a father. The war was over. He had protected his son, and in doing so, had brought a necessary and painful dose of order and justice to the entire community. He hadn't started the fight, but as he had done his entire life, he had finished it. A soldier fights for the flag, but a legend fights for the ideals it represents. Mac Thorne reminded an entire community what those ideals are. If you believe true strength lies in protecting the innocent, comment respect below. Subscribe and share to honor all who serve with integrity.